Chapter 5. The Loch Labarina, Maddening Maid. Must have gotten to them before us. Entriua lit himself a smoke. Another kind of smoke was issuing from the wreckage of the Armored Air Mobile Personnel Transport Vessel before their eyes. It wouldn't have been out of place to spot at least a few wounded, but there were none to meet the eye. Odds were they'd been carried off to the field hospital. 3 soldiers stretched a rope around the perimeter of the vessel, glaring at Entriua with furrowed brows. How did they know to find them here? Puzzled Kite. That's what I want to know. Why don't you go ask those soldiers for us, huh? Right. Of course. Kite walked up to them. Only about an hour had passed since they deduced the members of the Klasbiel Anti-Imperial Front Gazanyu Cell's membership from the hotel manager's deposition. Investigators wasted no time checking related sites, such as their residences and places of work. And one of those sites was the holiday home of one Min Kursap. At present, not even a single one of the cell members had been spotted in any of those places, let alone the of. Kite dashed back over. Min Kursap apparently used to be a member of the secessionist party and a very high-ranking leader at that. Then, a cursory search turned up a large stockpile of munitions. What did you say? Entriua scowled. They'd already looked into the gist of what there was to know about the cell members through the computing net. He was a secessionist party member 3 years ago. That fact must not have been seen as very important. Kite shrugged. May I continue? Go ahead. As I was saying, Min and several of his companions appeared while they were cordoning off the area. And when they questioned him, it turned into a firefight. Entriua gave their surroundings another once-over. The trees that had been shot were still smoldering, and the parts of what used to be a walker were strewn next to the transport vessel. And what a firefight it was. Undoubtedly. So where is this Min? Was the Av among his companions? Regarding that, Kite hesitated to say it. It seems that since they let them slip away, they don't know for sure. They let them slip away. Entriua shouted at Kite hot-headedly, but then he remembered that 1, Kite wasn't his subordinate, and 2, it wasn't Kite's fault. So he settled on cynicism. You lot, you're not even really all that, are you? You've got all of the equipment, but that's about it. I'm too ashamed for words. So where'd they run to anyway? Kite gestured toward the soldiers. It'd appear they don't know the details, since they were deployed here after the fact. You people have no coordination. Level C clearance is needed to access that information. And you haven't got Level C clearance? I do. I'm going to take a peek now. Well, good. Entriua dropped his smoke's embers onto the ground and stamped them out before lighting up another. Kite peered into his transceiver's screen and whispered something. Subsequently, the information displayed, and he read it aloud. Min and 6 companions fled underground from Mark RC 193-401 at 8:17 military time. 4 people under military police Major Arana died, and 12 were injured. 8 have begun tracking them under the command of Military Police Sub-Lieutenant Mohamedov. At 8:30, Military Police Command requested backup from the District Management Headquarters. In response, 3 infantry platoons under Lieutenant Sleet were dispatched at 8:55. Said reinforcements arrived at the scene at 9:14 and are currently tracking them down on foot. What's this military time business? Is it different from our time? Yes. Right now, it's 9:35 military time. It's slower by 21 minutes. Entriua stretched. He'd been working for too long. His back hurt. And now that he thought about, he hadn't had a good night's sleep in days. What do we do now? Do we head underground as well? Can't say that's the brightest idea. We just get in the other soldiers' way. Then do we give up here? Kite gave him a puppy dog look. No, we're not throwing in the towel now. He had only a half day left to spend with this guy, he reasoned. They're hiding in the Gazanyu caverns. Criminals and adventure-seeking kids have been disappearing into them for who knows how long. It's a regular stomping ground for us police. So much so, we've taken to calling the cops in Gazanyu crawlers. They've got to have fairly detailed info on the place. Then, yep, if they grab the Av and her gang in those tunnels, then there's nothing we can do. But we can get to them before they do. Your friends have got odor or heat detectors, right? I'd be shocked if they don't. Then they must know where the Av's gone. Can you find out where the soldiers who track them are right now? Yes, Kite said with enthusiasm, of course. Great. Let's chase that lead, then. Entriua took a deep breath. Just to warn you, though, if there's no of among them, I don't much care. Got it? Luminous letters floated in the dark. They were using the CompuWatch's heat detector function. It wasn't as accurate as a dedicated heat detector device, but it did show them a rough estimate of their distance, their bearing, and the size of their heat signatures. They're close, Jinto breathed. 1,000 dag away, if that. Uh-huh. The enemy stalked ever nearer without any illumination. And why would they use any? It was obvious they had night vision goggles or something of the sort. In other words, the enemy could see them. Leifir had her frocross, but that did nothing to tip the scales. He could hear a buzz where he knew Leifir was. He sensed her move. The next instant, countless lines of fire clove through the darkness. Since they were holed up in the inner part of the branching point, bullets didn't come flying their way, but they did punch into the cave's edge, causing small explosions. Shards of stone rained down on them. Take cover, said Leifir, voice strained. The moment Jinto obeyed, a hell of an explosion rocked him. The phaser magazine that Leifir lobbed had released all of its energy instantaneously. The dark yielded to the dazzling light, and the temperature within the cave rose several degrees. The firing lines broke off. Come on, run. Jinto dashed for the depths. In the momentary light, they could make out the wide-open mouth of the small cave. Yet as they raced, darkness enclosed them once more. Stop, said Leifir, upon reaching a spot by the small cave's mouth. You gonna attack em here? His voice quavered. He thought himself pathetic, but then he thought twice. It was just him being human. Yep. You had best take a knee and ready your gun. You got it. Jinto did exactly that. Leifir reached a hand to adjust his gun's aim. When I give the signal, aim up and down and don't stop firing. Aye aye. Though I'm not super confident shooting at targets I can't see. You're such a lousy shot that whether or not you see them has no bearing. Thanks for giving it to me straight, he said, deflated. No. Having detected them with her frocross, Leifir began firing. Jinto pulled the trigger with abandon, waving the gun up and down. A shriek. Did I just shoot a dude? Maybe this was what they called the battlefield mentality. No rage, no guilt. If he had to name what was impelling him to pull that trigger, it was fear. The phaser itself wasn't visible in the dark. The points of light that hit the victims' bodies were. That light illuminated still more enemy soldiers that were being sent spinning. Their positioning allowed them to fire comfortably, but the enemy was not afforded the same, a gap very much borne out by the fruits of battle, a pile of corpses. Jinto was racked by nausea. Of course, just because the enemy had disadvantageous positioning didn't mean they had acted as targets and nothing else. The gleaming lines of fire chipped away at the granite in the cave walls. Rapid fire sprayed a point not even 10 dag away from him. The cave's edge was alive with gunfire. Jinto took aim and strafed, firing continuously. The soldiers' guns glanced away, accompanied by screaming. Perhaps their arms had joined their guns in flying off. The inside of his mouth was bone-dry. Man, I'd give my noble rank for a glass of cold water right now. This he thought with all seriousness, for that was all his rank meant to him. The cave was lit by the dim glow of death. He could just make out an enemy hand move. Something came flying through the air. Jinto. Leifir kicked his right flank. Jinto immediately understood why she had. He rolled into a small grotto. Leifir slid in after him. Come on, deeper. Jinto twined bodies with Leifir and raced for the inner recesses. Suddenly, a blast wave bowled them over from behind. Jinto pitched forward and tumbled twice over. He had failed to take into account how phaser magazines were nothing more than substitute bombs. They were virtually party poppers compared to real-deal hand grenades. The wave of intense heat squashed down on their backs. Hot, hot, hot. Jinto gritted his teeth. Though they were on their stomachs, still they crawled forward. The crashing of copious rubble rumbled to their rear. It was a cave-in. Quick! Jinto somehow managed to get to his feet and helped her up. The collapse continued apace. The igneous rock, which had become brittle due to weathering, was coming off the walls, plummeting down onto Jinto's shoulders. Finally, a pause in the crumbling. Jinto looked back, but unfortunately could only see pitch darkness. "What's the situation?" asked Jinto, relying on Leifier's Frocross. "We're sealed in." "For real? Why would I lie?" Right. Jinto set his gun to illuminate. The grotto was totally sealed. The ground above them had probably given way. Jinto wasn't sure how to interpret this turn of events. Maybe he should thank his stars this had saved them by keeping the enemy away. On the other hand, it was more than possible that this passage had no exit. For all he knew, this was their living tomb. "In any case," said Jinto, "let's keep going and see what's down there." "I see no other choice." That was when Jinto noticed he'd lost the duffel bag. "Oh well," thought Jinto resignedly. He'd transferred the important things like cash and phaser cartridges to his pocket anyway. Jinto switched out the used-up cartridge for another and started down the pitch-dark path. Enemy fleet found. Azimuth, 105-010. Distance, 0.12. Relative speed, 217.5 UStag. Ship number, around 20. Kvatis had picked up the planet of Klasbul using his Frocross. The group of patrol ships in the reconnaissance half-fleet Ftun was also close by. So, too, was the shadow of the enemy vessels rising up to face them. The enemy ships were clearly aiming for what lay behind the Ftun, which was to say, the Svagov Gate. Verification of enemy ships complete. They are thought to be 12 large-scale transport freighters, 1 patrol ship, and 6 assault ships, said the gunner staff officer. Our chances of victory are 0.987 in 1. Do we advise them to surrender? Kvatis asked his commander, Associate Commodore Spore. No need. They would if they wanted to. And they must already understand what's in store for them, came Spore's reply. Never mind that. Prepare for battle in normal space. Massed Battle Formation 5. Understood. Kvatis translated Spore's commands into reality. Yet the enemy ships didn't budge. They came creeping up the spatial warps created by Klasbul's gravity. A transmission from the enemy reported the communications staff officer. It's a holovision transmission. Time gap, 0.23 seconds. Connect them. A video link was established on the commander's bridge. Kvatis was surprised. He had been expecting a high-level enemy officer, but here instead was an of male. Though his garments were dirty, and he wasn't wearing a circlet, the frosh on his forehead, coupled with the iridescent blue hair and the face of beauty, betrayed his oddness. "Oh, so you're the commander, Great Duchess of Latepan." He flashed a wan smile. "Fancy we should meet under such circumstances." "It's been a while, Marquis of Svagov," she greeted him, inclining her head. "I never would have expected you to send a communication from aboard an enemy ship. What in heavens has transpired?" "To my great shame, I've been taken prisoner. They told me they'd kill a child before my very eyes if I didn't send the message." "I see." Spore's eyes turned grim and severe. "Please, then, your message." "There are 21 OVs in this fleet. My family, my servants, and the star pilots of the liaison fleet. If our lives mean anything to you, then you will refrain from attacking. We also demand safe passage through flat space. If we were to abide by those demands, what will become of all of you? I imagine we'd be sent to a prison camp or some such, Great Duchess. In any case, they've been chased into such a desperate corner that they have no choice but to trust demands like these will hold water," he continued with a rather detached air. "How fascinating." "Truly it is," nodded the Marquis. "Now, I bid you farewell, Great Duchess of Latepan. Fulfill your duty. Goodbye." "Goodbye, Marquis." The hologram cut out. "I really hate him." The Marquis. Spore bit the joint of her pinky and stood up from her special-ordered chaise. "Communications staff officer." "Yes." "Connect me through to them." "Through holovision, ma'am?" "Sound only is fine." "Roger." "Preparations complete." "Please speak." "This is the commander of the reconnaissance half-fleet Ftun, Associate Commodore Spore," she intoned imposingly. "Let the tolerance and generosity of the Star Forces be known, for we will give you a chance to surrender. We shall wait until the distance between us reaches 0.08 light seconds. Needless to say, this is contingent upon you not laying a finger upon our compatriots. Allow me to stress, again, the magnanimity of the Star Forces. For should you waste this chance to surrender, then we have an even sweeter fate prepared. That is, you will get to reflect on what an honor it is to die alongside of nobility as you disintegrate into elementary particles. The atoms that composed your bodies will probably even fall back onto the terrestrial worlds that were your homes, after a few 100 million years of riding the galactic vortex. A solemn silence gripped the bridge. Now transmit the following to all ships under my command. You needn't cipher it. Roger. Preparations complete. We will begin the attack at 0.08 light seconds distance. Once the assault has begun, you may ignore any signal of surrender from the enemy. Crush them completely. Show them no mercy, not even with Yukok lifeboats. I shall take all responsibility and all of the blame. Please wait. Kfatis stepped toward the commander's seat. What, senior staff officer, she said, her shoulders squared haughtily. Shooting an enemy that has surrendered would damage the reputation of the Empire and of the Star Forces. She glared at him with her blazing crimson eyes. But Kfatis had to stay his ground. And it may not be my place to say it, but it would also stain the crest of the Golden Crow. That seemed to have worked the effect he wanted. Spore leaned against her commander's seat, crestfallen, Kfatis perceived, and appeared to give the matter more thought. When next she laid eyes on Kfatis, a bewitching smile graced those venomously red lips. A shiver ran down the hecto-commander's spine. It was no doubt the smile a cat would make when playing with its prey, if cats had slightly richer facial expressions. You're right, senior staff officer. There's no beauty in assaulting an enemy that's surrendered. Let's not. I am grateful you have heeded my counsel, he answered warily. Incidentally, it's my prerogative how the prisoners of war are transferred, isn't it? Yes. You are the highest-ranking commander here, Lanyu. Kfatis couldn't fathom why she would ask a question whose answer she already knew. Lovely. What is your estimate as to the enemy's numbers? With 12 large-scale transport freighters, I imagine there are around 25,000 of them. That is, assuming their main cargo is people. I see. They could fit on a TARS-class transport freighter, couldn't they? They could, but... Kfatis furrowed his brow. He was only getting more and more confused. What was she scheming? TARS-class ships were small-scale transport freighters that accompanied reconnaissance half-fleets. There were also Rebath troopships, but those housed 1,500 at the most. Even if they were to save on living quarter expenses by inducing cryogenic sleep on all of the new passengers, they would be able to fit in no more than around 10,000 people. If 25,000 people were to board, it'd be physically filled to capacity. Moreover, transporting prisoners of war required the presence of an appropriate number of escort NCCs aboard. Run the numbers, will you? We will be bringing 25,000 aboard a TARS transport freighter. How long will it take, by ship's time, to get them to the imperial capital Lokfikar traveling through normal space? And you needn't spare any thought to deceleration. I don't mind spending all of our fuel accelerating at 2 demon of G-forces. Traveling only through normal space, he asked back in spite of himself. Correct. Now calculate. And so he was forced to start crunching the numbers. Distance from the enemy now 0.1 light seconds, somebody reported expeditiously. Using his CompuWatch, Kfatis summoned up detailed specs of the TARS class and determined the acceleration duration and final velocity in view of the mass of 25,000 people and the food and water they would need. Making sure to apply the rotation speed of the galaxy in his calculations, he divided the distance to the imperial capital by the speed, then factored in the time dilation rate. The result was just as absurd as he expected. It would take around 58,300 years. Is that so? Said Spore. I don't believe our prisoners would be too elated to discover it will take that long. I should think not. Then, let's make it a shorter, faster trip for them. They won't need a space-time bubble engine, nor a Roylagak, attitude control engine, nor any crew members. While we're at it, let's do them the favor of removing the gravity control system. Though even then it'd be too heavy, wouldn't it? Have you included food and water in your calculations? Yes, 1 year's worth, and then a hydroponic plantation facility of the smallest possible dimensions would need to. Oh, there won't be any need for hydroponics. Get rid of it for them, won't you? I could also remove their food, drinking water, and air purification system if you wish, said Kvatis, reluctantly setting foot on her train. Don't be stupid. They'd die if we did that. We could never be so cruel. Now then, the ship must have gotten quite light by now. Not appreciably lighter than before, I think. Be a dear and run the numbers. Kvatis did so. It will take about 49,100 years. See? We've saved them nearly 10,000 years. That's an appreciable difference, and I won't hear otherwise. Well, that is true, but... Communications Staff Officer. Spore raised her command staff and let fly her orders. I have a message for all ships. No ciphering. I'm amending my orders. You are to absolutely respect any inclination on their part to surrender. However, those who surrender only after battle has commenced will be taken to Lokfakar through normal space only. The transport freighter that is to ferry them must, with an eye toward necessary time saving, be divested of frivolities such as its space-time bubble engine, gravity control system, and its attitude control engine. No crew members are to board either. The prisoners shall be given 1 year's worth of food and water for their trip. The amount of time it will take them to arrive will vary depending on the number of prisoners, but as of now it's estimated at around 49,000 years. In addition, the maximum occupancy of the transport freighter in question is 1,500. That is all. Please wait, Lanyu. Silence, Senior Staff Officer, she asserted. This is my final decision. I will consider any further words of counsel as insubordination. What a Lokfakar, maddening maid, he blurted out. Spore put the back of the hand that was holding her command staff to her mouth and laughed a mighty, boisterous laugh. Ho ho ho. I do like the sound of that title for me. Kvatis was at a loss for words. Distance from the enemy now 0.09 light seconds. He stood stock still, focusing on the enemy ships he could sense through his frocross were steadily increasing their relative velocity as they approached. Then, abruptly, the increase in their relative velocity slowed. In fact, the only fleet accelerating was now the Ftun. The enemy has ceased accelerating, reported the navigation staff officer, lending yet greater credence to what Kvatis's frocross was telling him. The signal of surrender, ma'am, reported the communications staff officer with audible relief. The enemy is requesting to be treated with magnanimity. Phew. Kvatis exhaled the hot air that had built up in his lungs. But of course, said Spore, nonplussed. I never fail to treat prisoners of war with the utmost lenience. If what she had in store for them before was lenient, then I'd hate to be treated with magnanimity, thought Kvatis. Lest you worry, we will be transporting them through flat space. I of course guarantee them a pleasant journey. If they're well-behaved and luck is on their side, they might even eventually tread their homelands through a prisoner exchange, and without even needing to get atomized first. Allow me to relay, said the communications staff officer, who then faced the console and began the transmission. Senior Staff Officer. Yes, Kvatis replied nervously. I hate fussing over the little things. I've no desire to bother you, but... Understood. I shall allocate ships to raid and commandeer the enemy's vessels at once. So quick on the uptake. She tapped her cheek with the tip of the command staff. But always remember, I also hate being interrupted. Particularly when I'm giving orders. I apologize. Now then, make it so. Allot numbers 1 and 2. As you command. The other squadrons will take control of Klasbul's skies. Is that agreeable? As you command, repeated Kvatis with a salute. 2 hours later, the reconnaissance half-fleet Ftun took position 20 Sadak above Klasbul. Upon conducting surface recon, they discovered to their surprise that there were still several land war units deployed. It appeared that the troops aboard the captured freighter were a small part of a larger force. The Ftun was not built for land war, though it'd have no trouble turning an entire planet into a lump of lava, so they advised the enemy troops to surrender from their station above, demanding order be restored to the territorial citizens. However, due to some powerful jamming, that message got scrambled, and they couldn't be sure it had made it to the surface. The Ftun awaited the arrival of the land war units even as they prepared against potential attack from the surface. Spore sighed. They sure don't know when to give up, do they? And Nahaniaks, War on a terrestrial world lacks all elegance, too. But I can't complain. Because fortunately, I won't be the one wielding command.